Marie Boynton, B-O-Y-N.
Lock it in somewhere. I'm sorry.
Okay. We'll start over again.
How many takes do we get?
We get a lot of takes. It's digital. We can do as many
Especially
as we
if I
want.
interrupt.
Oh. Marie Boynton, and my last name is spelled B-O-Y-N-T-O-N.
Right. So Marie, during the flood, you had to stay at the home with the 5 kids and
Right.
keep everybody calm. Tell me how that went.
Well, it wasn't exactly the funnest thing I've ever done. I was just hoping that it would stop raising. That was the thing that kept bothering me, because I would get up during the night and check to see how many steps it had gone up to the upstairs. And finally at 2 o'clock, I noticed that it had stopped. I thought, oh, thank goodness. So then that was kind of the end of that. And so it kept going down a little at a time, and eventually by time everybody got up in the morning, it had gone down somewhat.
And that was after you'd already moved everybody up to the 2nd floor?
You know, they got up, well, they had to get up to the 2nd floor, 2.5 feet of water in the house. You're not going to be downstairs.
Yeah. So you got everybody, and how did you pick what you were going to take upstairs with you, or did you just try to get everything up there?
Well, as much as we could get up there, we can handle. Our bedroom set, our bedroom's downstairs, so we took our bedroom set upstairs, and then we had a piano. It was my mother's piano, so I really did want to save that. We got it up probably about a foot or a foot and a half is the highest we could get it, because we were afraid it was going to tip over if we got it any higher. And then the refrigerator, well, we put that up too, and I think probably got that about a foot up off the floor, and that was about all, you know. I had a wringer washing machine, which I dearly loved, and that was okay. And I guess the freezer, I think we jacked up one end of the freezer where the motor part was, and but it still got water in it. We just assumed it was going to be like the 1955 flood, which we only had 6 inches of water in the house. And this was 2 feet more than that, so
Wow.
we weren't quite planning on all that.
So what sorts of things did you bring upstairs for everybody to eat? You didn't know how long you were going to be up there.
Well, we had dry cereal and milk. And that was the reason for the 1 cow after the flood waters went down, because we needed milk, so my husband would milk that 1 cow by hand. Remember, he had to keep in practice, so he milked that 1 cow, and that's what we had, cereal and milk, until he was finally able to get out. And then we didn't have any heat in the house, and it was so cold, because our oil heater, the tank that it was in a building outside, and the building had moved, and it knocked the stove oil tank over, and it fell on the ground, and so we lost all the stove oil. So then my husband put the stove oil tank on the back side of the house, and then he went over to my parents who lived over here, and he got some stove oil from them, and so then we were able to get some heat in the house. But it was about a week or so before we were able to do that.
In December, and cold and rainy and
Oh, it
wet.
was, yeah. But, you know, you were always busy, though, cleaning up this and cleaning up that. And like I said, the girls both went through the house with their brooms and kept the water moving, so that when they were all through, there was just a little bit of a slick on the floor. But I forgot to open the door into our bedroom. And the door had blown open from the outside into our bedroom, and there was about this much sediment on the floor, and I thought, uh-oh, somebody's going to have to clean that up.
How did you clean that up? With a shovel?
Yeah, you had to, yes. Yeah, you do what you have to do at a time like that. We're lucky we had that, because there were times when I wasn't sure whether the house was going to stand or not. It would be hitting out on the front, just sort of like Don said about the barn. Well, the water kept hitting the front of the house, and you're thinking, well, this is an old house, and wonder if it'll hold or not in the meantime. But it did.
I imagine that I would be imagining it moving. Like you would be like listening to it and hearing it and kind of feeling like maybe the house is moving.
Yeah. Well, one of the children told me in the morning they heard a glass breaking, And on the front porch, I had glass around so that it would be nice and warm in there. Well, apparently one of those waves came up and broke the glass. But talking about a house moving, we had some people down the road down here who woke up. There were two brothers. They had a dairy down here, and they woke up in the morning and they said, you know, there's something wrong here. They just looked out the window and it wasn't the same view as they usually got. So they got up and they went out, and their house had moved during the night, and they slept right through it all.
That's funny. Oh my gosh! Imagine. I mean, it's not funny after you have to go put your.
No, I know, but afterwards it's funny, you know.
Of course. So you had a lot of cleaning up to do after the flood.
Yes.
And you know, just keeping spirits up in the family, because that's a big job that women had during the flood, was trying to keep everybody, you know, feeling like they were going to get through this.
Right, yes. Well, the thing was, we were lucky too that we had counters that were high enough where I could put all the dishes from the lower parts of the counters up onto the top, and so they would stay clean, but still there was all that sediment inside you had to clean out of there. And we didn't have any water, so we couldn't, I mean, we didn't have any water to clean with. We had lots of other water, so we had to wait until we got our pumps dried out and could get some real nice clean water to clean things out with after that.
I know that's one of the things that's so strange. I was interviewing one person. They were talking about fires starting and not being able to put the fires out because they had lost their water service in, I think it was Rio de la Scotia.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like water all around you, and yet you have no water that you need. You know, you don't have any clean water to wash with, you don't have any clean water to drink, and it's just
Right.
such an odd thing to be surrounded by water but not be able to use it.
Yeah. Well, I took some laundry uptown to the laundromat. They weren't too happy to see a lot of us because there's mud and things in our clothing and so on, and it was really hard on the washing machines, and they weren't too happy, but we didn't have any choice.
So cereal and milk, how many days did you live on cereal and milk?
Oh, probably about 5 or 6 days, because Don was not able to get out until about 5 days later when the water had gone down enough. And then that's when he went up to what we call the little store at that time, and he got that cereal, and that's when the man told him that, well, why aren't you up at the fairgrounds? Well, we didn't know. And then they also had food up at the Portuguese Hall that was brought in from the diocese. And so we never went up to get anything, and neither did my sister-in-law who lived over here. But later on they called and said, you have to come up. You both have to come up and get something. So we did, and I can't remember what we got now, but whatever it was, we were happy with it.
It's kind of cracking me up because Don said he had cereal for breakfast. I was thinking after 5 or 6 days of cereal and milk that you may never eat cereal again, but...
Well, these two brothers I was talking about, all they had was cornflakes. And they said they didn't think they would ever eat cornflakes again.
I would be like that. That would do it for me. So, you know, one of the things that we when we talk to different people about the flood, we notice that, you know, a lot of the people who were affected by the flood are people, you know, like Don and yourself, you know, Don who, you know, as a dairyman, you know, you always have to solve problems all the time, and that maybe people, you know, who have to do that sort of thing as opposed to, you know, people who live in the city who have really specialized jobs, you know, might be easier to get through, you know, to be able to get after the flood, kind of come back from the flood, because, you know, you're people who are used to, you know, doing that sort of work. What do you think about that? Do you think it's easier for people who live in the country or people who live in the city, or any thoughts on that?
Well, we never really got anything from, other than that food that we picked up at the Portuguese Hall, because we never asked for anything. We figured, well, we were probably a whole lot better off than a lot of the people were, so we figured we didn't really need anything.
And that's another thing that seems to come up, is that a lot of the people who were offered, you know, things like they tried to offer you food, and you're like, well, there are other people who may need it more. And that seems to come up quite a bit in the conversations that we've had.
Right, yeah. You just feel like, well, we don't want to take from somebody who really, really, truly needs it and they lost their homes and that such thing. That's, You know, we didn't lose our home. We didn't lose our cattle. We had everything. So.
And it's interesting too to hear you say, and we were really lucky because we had these higher shelves we can put everything on to keep, you know, them from getting dirty. It's like your glass is half full as opposed to half empty. You know, it's like, well, that was really a good thing that we had.
Mm-hmm.
When a lot of people might look at that and go, oh my God, everything was so muddy.
Well, what else could you do? You just, a lot of the immigrants who came across country, they went through a lot of things like that too. So, I don't know, it just didn't bother me. I went into my folks' home, they lived over here, and my father said it was 1 inch from coming into their house. And I walked in there and I told my mother, I said, oh, it was nice and warm in there. I was thinking, gee whiz. And she was complaining. No, not when you have to be in a cold, wet house, you don't complain. Well, and then we have a neighbor down here who had 4 feet of water in her house. And they had to move out because they had to clean it up, and they moved uptown and had rented an apartment, and they finally got their house clean. But they didn't raise their house, so I thought maybe they would, but they didn't, because they would have had to raise it 4 feet, and there was already about 3 feet off the ground already, so I thought that was probably a little bit high. And we considered raising our house, but our house is so old and the floors are kind of rotten on them, so we thought if we try to raise that house, it would probably all fall apart. So Tyson may have to go through it. I don't know whether he will or not. He's living in the house now.
Well, I thought it was really ingenious of you to come up with the idea of swirling the mud and to keep it up off the bottom. I mean, I wouldn't have thought of that, but that was really ingenious to think of that as a way to keep it moving, to get it out before it settled down.
Right, yeah. You'd had, you know, slick on the floor, but you didn't have all that mud where I went into our bedroom and there it was, about 6 inches of mud there, and I thought, oh gee.
So did you have to strip out the flooring in there?
Well, we had linoleum and it held up well, except for in the kitchen we had tile on the floor, and that did start coming up later on, so we had to replace that. But as for the rest of it, we had the rug that was in the living room was upstairs, and basically everything else was glued down quite well. So.
Great. Well, any questions you guys might have?
Is there any, since we're here collecting stories, are there any other stories that you come to mind now that we're talking about the flood that might have been somebody else's story that kind of brings back the flood to you?
Oh, not really, no. I was thinking of the snake that Don got a hold of. We had a friend who had a home out at Petrolia. And he lives in Ferndale, but he had a home out in Petrolia. And he said once he thought he had a hold of a rope in his storage shed. And he said he grabbed a hold of that rope, and he said he grabbed a hold of it and it was a snake. And he said it takes so long for that brain to tell that hand to let go of that snake. So I was thinking of that after he told me that story.
I think so. It probably feels like a million years. Like
oh, yes. Well, you're not going to look him in the eye, though, I don't think.
Probably not.
We're going to get more snake stories as we go along.
Yeah, I think so too. Well, thanks so much for
okay.
doing that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I was hoping his father would be home, but he's not home yet, so.
Because he has some stories too, huh?
Yes, he did.
Yeah. And how old was your dad? Do you know?
He was probably 7, and I think
7.
Larry was 6.
Oh my gosh. You
So.
really did have a house full of little ones.
Yeah, well, nothing happened. Well, when Don got up the next morning, he said he went out through the barn door there, and he said he looked over and he couldn't see the house. And he thought, oh my gosh, the house is gone, my whole family is gone. But apparently the way he was looking at it, he couldn't really see it. And then he found out that the house was still there. That was a real relief to him.